All right, happy 4th of July and welcome to episode 3 of the BigD podcast. My name is Mike and we'll get to all that. Episode 3, fireworks and rock bottoms, functional no more. I received a call yesterday. I was thinking of topics for today's episode and talked to a good friend of mine, someone I worked with, greatly respected, and he had brought up, we kind of thought maybe, you had a problem, but we weren't really sure how bad it was. And then we had a conversation about how many functional alcoholics are out there. They say in addiction, usually the last thing to go is the job. And one of the reasons for that, and we'll talk about it a little bit more as we go on today, is that the alcoholic feels that it's their last thing. I'm really not that bad because I can hold my job down. This is extremely dangerous stuff when it gets to this point. I was lucky enough to have a job that was office-based, but, there are a lot of functional alcoholics that drive forklifts that are in manufacturing. They're in all kinds of places, sports, you name it. There are functional alcoholics out there. Again, my name's Mike. I am a grateful alcoholic. And it's July 4th, baby. While the rest of the world's out there celebrating the independence from fireworks and cookouts, we're going to be lighting up a little different kind of bomb today. And that one's about the freedom from addiction. That's what the show is always going to be about. And the steps you can begin to take to change your life. If you've ever wondered, am I an alcoholic? Or can I really be one if I hold down a job? You'll want to listen to this episode, right? We're going to talk about what are some of the signs, those sorts of things, and there can be that moment that you can reach out, ask for help, talk to your employer, go on short-term disability, get the help you need, start turning your life around, and recover your life, essentially. Today we're going to be diving deep into the warning signs of addiction, what it means really to be a functional alcoholic. I think there's everybody's got their own opinion. You're going to hear my 2 cents for whatever it's worth, and I'm going to share some things I haven't talked about much. How I hit rock bottom, how I lied to survive, and how I'm beginning to crawl out to be able to not just be here, but regain trust within my own walls, outside my walls, and my community. Let's get ready for it. And the first thing is the quietness of the creep of addiction. It is very, very rare that people just wake up, drink one time, and they're a full-blown alcoholic. You may have issues. There may have something dramatically may have happened. You may have drank too much, had your stomach pumped. You got help. You never drink again. But usually there's this quiet little creep. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and then you start changing your behaviors. And when you start changing your behaviors, that's when addiction really grabs a hold of you and takes you away. Some of the warning signs that I ignored for years. I was hiding how much, I was drinking. People hiding the amount that they're drinking is definitely a warning sign. And you see it. Who's the first one at the bar? Who's the last one at the bar on a business trip, right? We stopped on our way here, to the grill out. We stopped down at the bar, had a couple, right? Pre-gaming, a lot of alcoholics pre-game to events just to feel normal. right? Because they're like, okay, I can have my 4 or 5 at this event, but you know, if I'm 4, 5, 6 deep before I get there, then I'm going to be where I need to be to function. Getting defensive when someone mentions you're drinking. That's the big one, right? Why would you be defensive about something that wasn't a problem? A lot of times, people are told, my wife told me, you need help, you need help, you need help, you need help. And I manipulated, I lied, I bullshit. Hell, I even said I wasn't drinking. All kinds of crazy, crazy things to prevent that conversation, the real conversation about your drinking, right? Some people have blackouts and memory gaps. I did not have blackouts. I was not a blackout drinker. I could drink, you know, I was no alcoholic because no alcoholic could drink like me type alcoholic, and I could always get up and function. I did have significant memory gaps within the last probably 3-4 years of my addiction, maybe 5, that you were doing things, you were making poor choices, you were snappy, you were overly you, and these are, you don't remember, or maybe you have to write it down. I carried a, you know, I had a horrible boss. She was just the worst thing that's ever happened. I think about 2023, just an absolute terrible person. And she gave me a book to write stuff down in because I would forget things, right? So then I got into that habit of doing that, and that helped quite a bit. And again, we talked about this on episode 1 and 2. The alcoholic wants one thing: one more day. Survive another day. That's all it is. You know, another thing is you start getting sick. As your addiction progresses, your body eventually says no mas. It falls apart. It becomes painful. Maybe you call in, or you get sick. I mean, in 2024 alone, I had my gallbladder removed. I had 2 strokes. I had kidney failure. I had sepsis. Man, alcohol had to do with every single one of those. Guaranteed it, right? But I lied, said I wasn't drinking. I have no idea why this is happening. You know, that sort of thing. Saying I can stop, and yet you never do. I bet I said to myself, okay, this is the last week. I got to get through this trip. Then I'm going to stop. I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to detox. Most alcoholics that become chronic know that they have to detox. And a lot of times, like for my case, I knew I'd have to be hospitalized or it was going to kill me. And sure enough, even hospitalized it damn well almost did. So if you're kind of listening to this and you're like, oh God, man, that might be it. You're not alone. I know it too. I used to watch stuff and on the internet and think to myself, oh yeah, that's me, but I'm not going to do anything about it. That's the problem. You know, the lie of becoming functional is where it all begins. You know, there's a dirty secret that nobody wants to admit. Functioning alcoholics aren't really functional. Let me say that again. Functional alcoholics are not really functional. They may appear functional, but the dysfunction in the background is astronomical. Whether it's medical, legal, you're making bad choices, you're having extramarital affairs, you're drinking and driving, you're doing all these things. The word functional should not be used. There's nothing functional about that. That's pure and utter chaos. And it's horribly sad. It is horribly sad. You know, when I went into inpatient, I ran into a lot of functional alcoholics, able to hold jobs, things of that nature. And little by little, everybody's story kind of all came came together and looked something similar. I mean, it's a different brand of bourbon, but they all kind of taste the same, right? So, I lied constantly to my friends, my family, mostly myself. I drink at lunch all the time, daily, mornings, daily, going back 5-7 years. I drink in my car. I had a car bar. I had, in the wintertime, I'd have cold ciders in there, and then I always had vodka hidden in there. Probably the last 4 or 5 years. I always had mouthwash. I would rub hand sanitizer on my face. Always be sanitizing, right? Because then that smell of alcohol is the sanitizer. It's not you. Well, that's what you thought in your head, but for God's sakes, let's be honest here. I gave speeches at events, half drunk and no one noticed, but it scared the hell out of me. I worked in HR. I was making decisions, and for the most part, I usually made good decisions. Not all the time, but I did. And that scares the hell out of you when you start doing things like that. I damn near died. I mean, the kidney failure alone, my kidneys weren't functioning, 0 zip. Was on dialysis, the whole thing. If I hadn't gone in, I would have died. Actually, my wife made me go in, and it was her birthday. That was 1 year ago. Saved my life. Wouldn't be the last time she saved my life, but, it definitely was one of them. But the world kept saying, you're doing great. And he believed a little of that. You get good feedback at work. I love the way you handled this. Love that. Great. And that validation kept me as an alcoholic. Being functional just means you haven't fallen apart publicly yet. But eventually, it does happen. And for me, it darn near cost me everything. Rock bottom is a basement, and I found mine, 2 strokes, cirrhosis, couldn't walk upstairs, pissed blood, I shook so bad I couldn't hold a cup, I was dying, and I was still trying to convince people I was fine. Everything's okay. I even took money from an organization I cared about deeply, just to keep the bottle full and the mask on. I don't say that lightly. It's not a story I'm proud of, but it's true. And I did it. I paid for it emotionally, legally, spiritually. And that's where, the story kind of begins. And that's where we're at. But when you start talking about functional alcoholic, you're going to see some warning signs, and these are things that obviously are shared, online resources or treatment facilities, all these things. One of them is isolation. The alcoholic becomes isolated from family, friends. They start slowly losing friends. I lost a lot of friends over the years, some of which, that's fine. They weren't great friends to begin with. Other people, I regret. And, it's the isolation, it's the individual seclusion of being an alcoholic. And even if you're drinking at a bar, you're drinking socially, you're at the hotel bar, you are very much alone. It's a facade. And, so you got the isolation. The other thing is the chronic alcoholic is always escaping. They always got an escape plan, right? They're missing work functions. They're changing flights, so they can drink. There's all kinds of markers for it. I always knew where I could get a drink in the morning, no matter where I went. Either I brought it with me. There were times at the airport where, I had little bottles in my carry-on, and I had a choice. I could either keep those or keep some of my toiletries, and I gave away my toiletries in order to keep those. Sounds crazy, but absolutely true. The other thing about the functional alcoholic is that they will do just enough to claim to be doing successful. And then they'll do things that seem above and beyond for recognition. Because it's those little things that the functional alcoholic thinks, okay, my performance isn't necessarily consistent, but I went above and beyond. I did this, and this. And then they get praise, and they feed into that. I fed into it every time somebody told me, I did good. One of the things that I could just do was I was always really good with people. Right? People usually responded very well to me. I had good rapport with people, interpersonal skills. That is a dangerous functioning alcoholic, right? Because they can manipulate situations to where people don't even know what's going on. They don't even have a clue. And, the manipulation, the lying, all these types of things that are going on in the background, that is how the functional alcoholic works. One of the other true things about a functional alcoholic is that they tend to not keep a lot of people close. And when they do, it's a very small group of people close. You're just more likely to get caught in your bullshit. And I was a prime example of that. Sometimes even some of the people knew the alcoholic that I was, and tried to get you help, and you just don't do it. So, we have people throughout society that are operating at what we would consider an acceptable or a semi-acceptable level without knowing that they're alcoholic. And this is where people's lives slowly go down the drain. And that's where mine went down the drain. I think I was promoted 3 times in the last 5 years that I was with the company that I was at. And that's pretty good, right? I mean, that seems like I was functioning at some sort of a high level. The alcoholic feels fear all the time. Their fear of getting caught doing whatever it is they're doing, and that could be a lot of different shit. They're afraid of rejection. They're afraid of losing their job. They're afraid of making big decisions. They'll make a lot of small, stupid ones, but big decisions and big change is something that really can send a shock into a functional alcoholic. I was in rehab with a guy whose job, essentially, he got promoted without even applying for the job. Departments reorganized, and it changed his workflow. It changed all these different things, and because he had been down the road of a chronic alcoholic for so long, he was unable to make the changes that the company required, and those flags started flying everywhere. This guy was great doing this. We expect him to be great doing that because he had the knowledge to do that, but it was a work change. The work hours changed. The amount of work changed. The stress changed. All those things throw a wrench into the perfect picture for the functional alcoholic. Right? I know other people, right, who have jobs that whether they're caregivers for people, they're first responders, and they are alcoholic. And sometimes it's an event that pushes them into getting help, and they're not there willingly all the time. And that's an issue, whether it's your wife threatens to walk out on you, you lose your job, you get a legal consequence, whether it's an OWI, a disorderly conduct, a domestic, something along those lines. And that functional alcoholic is just trying to put those pieces back. And they may not be committed 100% to quitting because they haven't had the right reason quite yet. This throws a complete chaos into the alcoholic's patterns. And things tend to get rocky. They get rocky at home, they get rocky at work, and, change usually is the outcome. Some people don't always, right? Some people go down the road and never seek treatment, never seek help, and one thing I do know is you can't do it by yourself. Regardless of what anybody tells you, even if you white knuckle it, you're doing something to yourself, whatever that is. But so for me, when everything started unraveling and the decisions that I were making were all coming to a crescendo and coming to a moment, I still wanted that one more day. One more day. And boom. Lost my job. My position was eliminated, but, the guy I was working for was whatever, clown, and couldn't be honest, which is fine. And I lost my job because of my drinking and my choices. What did I do? Well, should that have been a wake-up call? I had all this stuff hanging over me, legal, all this kind of should that have been it? No. I doubled down. I drank double. I said, I'm so upset about losing my job. I'm not going to start looking for a job. I'm going to, this, that, and the other. And it got horribly bad. The health just went into the tank. Next thing you know, in D-Tox and rehab. When people first discover that there is a basement to rock bottom, there's always something under the basement. But there can be a basement. And once you get there and you commit to, this is just an absolute shit show, and I'm driving the bus. And once you get there, you can start making those changes, those positive changes, right? Number one is going to be, the first thing is to get off alcohol. This is a massive change for a functional chronic alcoholic, to stop doing what you were doing. Because you spent so many hours of the day. I mean, I bet you I spent 2, 3, 4 hours a day trying to figure out where I was going to get my next drink, thinking down the road, buying extra, all that kind of stuff. It is a hard job to be a chronic alcoholic. And in fact, I was on a walk with my wife here a little bit ago, and, one of the things that's really keeping me from relapsing is because I'm naturally a little bit lazy. And that is some really fucked up, hard shit to be a chronic alcoholic. It hurts. It's painful. You got to remember lies. You got to remember all this stuff. And to me, it's just not worth it. And plus, I got, major medical stuff. Next month, I have an MRI to figure out how bad my liver really is damaged from the cirrhosis that my addiction caused. And, it takes about 6 months of sobriety because your liver's like in a perfect world, your liver's like a sponge, right? sucks everything in, and then when you stop drinking, it goes back down and it regains itself, right? When you have cirrhosis, basically, I turn my liver into a cannonball, and it's basically a pretty firm piece of nothing. And after about 6 months, you can really see the damage that you've done. So I'll be looking forward to that next month. The fireworks of recovery, with today being the July 4th, a lot of people love watching fireworks explode, but they also like watching people explode because it's good watching. I'd have a thing of popcorn and watch too if I could be on the outside and watch my life explode. But one of the things I'm really thankful for is the real celebration is waking up sober and not having to run into the garage, pour up a can of something with about that much whatever was in it, about that much vodka, shaking in the bathroom, gagging, trying to get that down. Because I knew once that got in me, my shakes would stop, things would start getting up and going because my body was so dependent on the alcohol. Just recently with all the legal stuff that I got that's going behind me, I'm still waiting to wake up without shame, guilt, hatred towards yourself. That's going to definitely come in time. You can, it's just so much better. You don't have to lie all the time. You can be honest. You can actually share some of the stuff you did when you were during your active addiction. And I mean, some of my stuff was relatively funny. I went to Nashville with my wife and friends one time. I don't remember when it was, but last couple of years, and I was so screwed up all the time that I was ordering Tito's and vodka. That was the drink I was ordering, Tito's and vodka. Not Tito's and soda, Tito's and vodka. But, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's like, oh man, that's bad. But it's still kind of funny a little bit to remember some of the stupid shit that you do. Not all of it. Some of it is horribly painful to think about. The other thing is you can have genuine conversations with people. You listen more. You feel great when you aren't full of shit going through motions. When you really care about someone, asking them how their day was. When you really want to learn something. Reading, all that kind of stuff is so different when you're not completely numb from vodka. And then you have emotions that are real. And I don't think I had real emotions for whatever. They were all insane. It was just pure insanity for the longest period of time. And, they're not numbed into silence either. The real deep down, dark shit is not numbed. You can get through it. You can go to therapy. You can talk to other people. You can share at AA meetings. I go to AA every day. A program is fantastic. Does it work for everybody? No. Is there a higher power type thing? There is, but it's one of the tools in my toolbox to help keep me grounded and sober. I go early in the morning, and I could be like, I don't really want to go today. Go to a meeting, and it might be a first step meeting. Someone's there who is there. They've decided they're going to quit. It's called a first step meeting. We're going to talk more about AA. and some of the actual meat and potatoes of things that they teach you in recovery. We're going to get some people from Madison Recovery on to experts to help us along the way. But yeah, it's interesting. You start your day pretty well. Again, I also try to do something every day for my sobriety. Today, AA, got on the elliptical, right? Got that dopamine going. Gonna be spending time with my kids, going to see F1 with Brad Pitt. I mean, who doesn't love a good action type movie? Brad Pitt actually has gotten so old that it sounds like he plays the old guy. So that'll be something good. I'll be able to remember that one. And, the other thing is you start recognizing yourself again. I talked last week about not looking at yourself in the mirror, and slowly you start recognizing the person that, not that you were, because for me, I can't really put a picture on a time that I wasn't heavily hampered by alcohol. But it's the person you're becoming. And it's a beautiful thing, to be honest with you. Shave every day. I used to go 3, 4, 5 days without shaving because I just didn't want to look at myself in the mirror. And you see these little glimpses of positivity in yourself. And that really makes you feel so good. And these were the things that when I was functioning on alcoholic, it was outside stuff telling me, oh, hey, good job on that. Great job doing this. You're killing it. All this kind of stuff. And you were fed from the outside. And now I'm being fed from the inside as well. And it's really fantastic. Before I had to think of how I act. Right, so I had to think about how I was going to act to convince people, lie, whatever the case may be. And now I act the way I act is how I think. So it's an insanely different outlook. I'm in early recovery. I am not fixed. I am not a certified mental health person. I'm not anything. I am sharing my journey. We are posting our podcasts on YouTube video. We are also on Spotify. We're getting set up on Apple as well. I'll be updating the website. We're going to put some resources on there for suicide prevention. We're going to put a lot of informative stuff about recognizing signs of alcoholism, steps you can take, how to talk to your employer, how to treat employees, how to treat people, right? I mean, you want to believe the way that if you've gone to rehab, I know what some people think. And, like I said, I think on my first episode, it's one of the things I've learned is, quite frankly, what other people think of me is none of my business. And I have to think that way because, it's that outside telling me that I'm a piece of shit or a drunkard or a quitter or all these things that, and when those start getting in, when that noise starts getting in, that's where, relapse can happen. Right, it brings you down. So we're gonna be doing that. Please share the podcast. Please subscribe. If you know anybody who's in, you want to send a note saying, hey, look, I know somebody I'm concerned about. How did X work for you? Or whatever. Also, if you want to reach out and say, hey, look, I have somebody, would you mind giving them a call? absolutely. I've talked to people who have unaddressed addiction issues, trying to get them resources, trying to reassure them that it's not the end of the road. And for me, it's the end of the beginning. So we'll have the resources on there. Send me an email, throw a comment in there. Like I said, I'm not fixed. I still have days where, I'm just like, God, maybe I just want to disappear in the bottle. But I don't. Not today. Not July 4th. And remember to be nice to people, because you have no idea the demons that people are dancing with. I look forward to any suggestions that anybody has on future shows, and we'll look forward to getting some stuff dropped next week. We're going to start really looking into the actual treatment side of addiction. Like I said, I have 2 folks over at Madison Recovery that are going to be joining the podcast here in the next couple weeks. And so I wish everybody a fantastic 4th of July. Don't blow fingers off. I used to do fireworks, and by the grace of God, I didn't kill anybody or myself. But again, I sure tried. But other than that, I hope everybody has a great day. Like, share, comment on Facebook, get a conversation started. If you don't like the podcast, feel free to share that too. Feedback's a gift, as they say. So I hope you have a great day, and enjoy your summer.